In this video, we're going to learn how to graph trigonometric functions, the sine and the cosine graphs, these two graphs. So, first thing is, how will you tell the difference between a sine and cosine graphs? How do I notice? What notice you notice between the red graph, the sine, and the blue graph, the cosine? What differences do you notice? The biggest one I notice is the cosine graph kind of looks like a C, where the sine graph kind of looks like an S on its side. That's a good way to think it out, because sine will always start at 0, go up to 1, back down to 0, go down to -1, and back up to 0. Where cosine starts at 1 and ends at 1, drops to -1, and right in between these two it hits the midline. Again, the blue one looks like a C for cosine, the red one looks like an S for sine. You can choose your way to remember it. Just remember, it comes from the unit circle. If you look at your unit circle, at 0, your sine is 0. Your cosine is 1. At pi over 2, your cosine is 0. Your sine is 1. And so forth. You could figure it out from a unit circle. Now, if we quickly want to look at this, your midline for both of these is y equals 0. Your amplitude for both of these is 1. Amplitude is how far it is from the midline to the highest point. The midline is the x-axis. That's why it's 0. And your period for both of these is 2 pi. One cycle is in 2 pi. Now, they're all very similar. Just the reason is one cycle is 2 pi. It's one time around the unit circle. The moment you change, do things to the equations, is it changes faster or slower within 2 pi. So, sine and cosine. Make sure you can really tell the difference between the two. It helps out a lot. Alrighty, let's look at this. We're going to find the midline, amplitude, and period of this graph and then write the equation. So the midline. Hopefully you can see, well, the middle is right down the middle there. So hopefully you can see that is the middle. So our midline is y equals 0. Our amplitude is how far up from the midline and how far down do we go. Well, if you look, we're going up 3 and down 3. So our amplitude is 3. And our period, where period is one cycle. So if we started right here, one cycle ends right there. Because you can see it goes up and down and then it starts repeating itself. So that cycle is 2 pi length. So our period is one cycle, which is 2 pi. Now if we want to put that all together into an equation, all right, first of all we have to decide, is this sine or cosine? Does this graph, starting at 0, look like an S or a C? An S. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to say it is, I'm going to write sine. I know this is a sine graph. Now, what number goes in front? The amplitude. A stands for amplitude, and A is the front number. So our amplitude, or the number in front, is 3. Alrighty, our midline is 0. Midline goes on the outside here. It's what you add or subtract to move it up or down. So you could write plus nothing because the midline is 0. But you don't have to, because again, midline is your k value, how far up or down they get shifted. Now 2 pi relates to the period, all right? The period is 2 pi, so that affects the inside here. What you should know is normally it's 2 pi, which that doesn't change anything. So 2 pi divided by the b value equals the period. So if my period is 2 pi, 2 pi divided by what will give you 2 pi? And hopefully you know that would be 1. So the b value is the number in front of x. So I have an x here. What is the number multiplied on? It's b. Well, what would be b? Be 1. 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. So that would be a 1 there, or just x. So that would be the equation of this graph. Midline 0, amplitude 3, period 2 pi. Basically, if it's ever 2 pi, your inside's always x, because 2 pi is normal. The moment it gets squished or spread out like a slinky, then you're going to be changing this number in here, b. This is your a, b. We're not going to talk about h in this problem, and k is out here. Alrighty, let's look at this one. So, midline, amplitude, period. So let's see. let's start right, we're starting right here, and one cycle ends right there. Now if we look at that, it's kind of hard to maybe see the midline, but can you tell the midline goes right through the middle there? Now, that's the middle. Now, the reason you can tell is if you go up and down, it goes up and down the same length. You can also tell because if you go from highest to lowest, you just kind of find the middle of the highest and lowest point. It's your call. So that looks like the midline is y equals 2. It's a horizontal line. Our amplitude is how far up and down you go from the midline, and it looks like we're going up and down a half length. Our period is how long is one cycle. So one cycle goes from 0 to there. You always want to start with 0. It makes it easier. So it looks like 2 pi over 3. So one cycle is 2 pi over 3. All right. Now, is this a sine or cosine graph? Well, that looks more like a C than an S. Right there, that one little section. So that looks like a C. So this is cosine. So I'm going to go with cosine. And now we got to fill in everything else. So there's x there. What number goes in front? The amplitude, so the 1/2. Amplitude goes right there. What number goes on the back side is how far up and down you get shifted, the midline, which is called the midline. So that would be +2. And what goes in here? The period adjustment. Now, it's not 2/3 pi. What you have to realize is, again, 2 pi divided by your b value. This right here is your b value. But 2 pi divided by b equals 2 pi over 3. So that would be equal to 2 pi over 3, our period. So again, 2 pi divided by b is your period. So what number would b have to be so that 2 pi over what is 2 pi over 3? And hopefully you can tell that would have to be 3. So our b value is 3, so it equates to our period. One other way to think of it is when I have a 3 in front, do you notice I do 1, 2, 3 cycles in 2 pi? So that number also tells you how many cycles you have in a 2 pi span. You can see I have 3 cycles in a normal 2 pi span because 2 pi is our reference to our normal cycle. Alrighty, here's another graph. So let's mark our initial zero value, and it looks like it ends right there. All right, the midline's a little harder to see here. Look carefully. It goes from -5 to 3. -5 is a span of 8. Half of 8 is 4. So where 4 would that be? Hopefully you can see it right here. Can you tell that splits it right there? Might be hard to see, but again, from -5 to 3 is 8. Half of 8 is 4, so that means I'm going to go up 4 and down 4 would make an equal distance between the top and the bottom. So it looks like y equals -1, is your midline. Your amplitude, well, like we said earlier, is up 4, down 4, up 4, down 4. So our amplitude is 4. And our period, well, it looks like one cycle goes to 8 pi. So our period is 8 pi. So let's write the function. Well, we should notice this looks like a C, not an S. So I'm going to call this a cosine. We have an x here. Now, what is the number in front? It's your amplitude, which is 4. All right, next, what is our shift up and down? Looks like we've been shifted here in the green line down 1. So I'm going to put -1. And what is my b value? Well, my way I do this again is 2 pi divided by what gives you 8 pi. Now, if you can't just see that, that's a little tough. This is really tough. You can solve this, okay? Because some people can't see that the answer is actually 1/4. Okay, this is 1/4 x. Now, how did I get that? I'll show you in a second. But hopefully you can also see that would have to be a 1/4. Another way to think of it as, in 2 pi, do you see how I have a fourth of the graph? And then another fourth, and a fourth, and a fourth. You have a fourth of the graph in a normal 2 pi section. At 2 pi, you have a fourth of the graph. Now, that might be confusing, too. So how did I solve for b here? What I did is I simply put a 1 underneath, and I cross-multiplied solve. So that would be, when I cross-multiply and solve, it'd be 8 pi b equals 2 pi times 1. Divide by 8 pi, both sides. Cross those out, and you can divide by 8 pi. Do you see here I get b equals 1/4? I got that number right there. So if you simply cross multiply and solve, you will get your b value. So that right there would be the equation of that one. All right, for this one, where is our midline? Our midline looks like it's right there, in the middle there, which would be y equals 2. Our amplitude, well, how far up and down are we going? Looks like a 1. So our amplitude is 1. Our period, well, that's where it starts. There's 1 cycle. So what's that 1 cycle? It is from 0 to 2, so that is a period of 2. We don't have a pi on this one. If you notice, our x values go by numbers this time. All right. So hopefully you notice this is a cosine graph because it looks more like a c than an x. So next, what number goes here? 1, which we don't have to put. What number goes here? It deals with our period. And what number goes outside? It's our midline. So we know our midline is the middle, is at +2. Let's, though, go back to our period. Back to the idea, we're going to look at, okay, 2 pi divided by what gives you 2? Remember, 2 pi divided by b gives you 2, your period. So what would I divide by? What's b going to be so that I get a 2? Hopefully you can tell that it would have to be pi. So I have pi x, because b, when you divide by pi, cancels, gives you 2. Again, if you can't see that, you could divide, put the 1 underneath here, cross multiply, solve, and you would get your b value is pi. Here's our next problem. Let's see, what's our midline? Well, it looks like, oh, it's right through the middle. Our midline's 0. Oh, nice. So our midline is y equals 0. Alrighty. Well, how far up and down do we go? Well, it looks like we're going up and down a 1. Okay, our amplitude's 1. All right. So what our period? Our period, okay, that's going to be the trickier one. So let's see, I started there, I ended there. Okay, that's 1 period. Okay, so my period is 1. Oh, that's not that bad. Okay, so let's make our equation. Did you notice this is a sine graph, but isn't my sine graph upside down? Don't they normally go up and like that? So it's upside down. So we said it's a sine graph. Okay, but it's upside down. My amplitude's 1, so I could put a 1 in front, but it's upside down. How do we flip a graph? Doesn't that mean this is a -1 or a negative sign? Because it's upside down. Oh, cool. All right, my midline is 0, so I don't need to put anything here, but what is my b? So let's think about that. 2 pi divided by b equals 1, because I want my 2 pi divided by what is 1. All right, what would that be? Again, you can put a 1 underneath, cross multiply, solve, but hopefully you can know 2 pi divided by 2 pi is 1. So this would have to be 2 pi. So that would be the equation of this line. Hopefully you've caught on that when the x values are by 1s and 2s, integers, you're going to have a pi as a b. When your x-axis has pi's, you do not have a pi in the b. That's something you want to watch out for. Also start watching out for negatives. If it's upside down, make sure you catch the negative and make sure you don't skip that part of it.